finally, a topic I'm actually extremely passionate about. Manime. Take a seat as I indulge myself, for however long this video ends up being, over the only subgenre of anime I care about, more or less. Manime. Firstly, let's clear any stigma that may or may not still exist surrounding the term manime. Contrary to what some disillusioned fools might say, manime is not a sexist term, just slapped onto shows like Hokuto no Kin, Ultimate Muscle, Baki, or Bobobo, or Dragon Ball. To try to portray these testosterone-roiling, blood-boiling, vascular shows about men fighting practically 24/7. Settling qualms with fists and blood spillage. As anti-women. No, I believe everyone should be able to enjoy manime. Man, or woman, child, or embryo. Manime, more or less, is an identifier. It's a term to separate time periods, kinda. But more importantly, the fact is that back in the day, yes, these shows were targeting young rambunctious males who just wanted to see buff men beat each other up. And also, at least on a subconscious level, to witness a stiller portrayal of men sharing some kind of unforeseen camaraderie after fighting. Also, fire and beating the shit out of a tank and explosions. It's mostly just a term for the demographic historically. Did men historically enjoy these shows more than women? Yes. Does that mean that women can't also enjoy this stuff too? Absolutely not. That'd be stupid. It's just as the title says, men historically enjoyed these shows about sweaty fighting monstrous guys more than girls did. Or, well, I guess, in some ways. And the focus of these shows was big fighting men, thusly it's manime. Part 2. The obvious differences. What sets manime apart? Why not just call all these shows anime? Well, I mean, go ahead. I won't stop you. But just know, I will continue differentiating them. Anyways, a lot actually separates them. Take a look at any show like Fist of the North Star, Dragon Ball, Baki, Ultimate Muscle, and berserk at times.
この世界には人の運命を司る何らかの超越的な律、神の手が存在するのだろうか。少なくとも人は自らの意志さえ自由にはできない。
Compare these to one of the many hundreds of these generic-looking isekais? I think that's how you say it. I couldn't tell you. I don't much like this genre, regardless. It's just not my thing. And it doesn't help that they all usually look like probably don't even need to explain what differentiates the two. Even if you can't explain the difference, you can feel it. The two are almost completely different mediums, in a way, yet both can still be classified as anime. But this is where Manime comes in, and sets a very clear and reasonable gap between these shows. If you like anime, and I mean anime and not manime, that's fine. Everyone has their interests, no two people are alike, I'm not sure why you're watching this video and all that is fine. I personally hate it though. I don't like the art style of most of it, I'm not a big fan of the way characters sound and act.
That sucks so bad.
A lot of it's just, and I'm sorry for coming off the way I'm about to come off, annoying to me. Just very annoying. I like One Piece though, kinda. This is just extraordinarily peak character design. These shows are similar in the same way a chihuahua is similar to a wolf. Lots of genetics engineering and other shenanigans afoot until we eventually domesticated it into a purse pet. These shows are stylistically different. They hardly ever have similar soundtracks.
God, that sucks so bad.
They don't focus on the same things, they portray different morals and stories often, and overall the look and feel of these two shows is almost always, with few exceptions, completely and totally in contrast. So truly it doesn't make sense to lump them together, at least in my humble opinion. Unfortunately, I think that the manime of the past, or at least the manime that I'm interested in, maybe to a slightly unhealthy degree, is more or less a relic of the past. Part 2.5. I veer off yapping. I mean, sure, there are shows like Dragon Ball Super today. and other shows that portray buff men. But as with many cartoons in general, and not just with Manime, that traditional animation and just the overall mood of a lot of 80s anime and Manime, and well, as I said, just cartoons overall, is something that has pretty much become lost. Everything modern, for the most part, looks very clean nowadays. Every character has similar baby face syndrome, and music in modern anime and Manime is, I'm going to be a little pretentious here for a second, not as soulful anymore for the most part. But I'll get back to this later. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with clean or modern looking digital art and animation. I mean, I'd be a hypocrite to state otherwise, considering I animate digitally, and I draw using Photoshop a lot of the time. My problem is the diversity between the mediums is gone. Well, in some ways. It's hard to find anything being made today that resembles or sounds or feels similar to Japanese movies or shows like Akira. Or Hokuto, early Hokuto, not the remakes. Even early One Piece, pre-time skip, was kinda built different, in a way that I thoroughly enjoyed. Sure, it had a simplistic art style that not a lot of people loved, but more so than that, it had a lot of character. It really set itself apart from other shonen, and was kind of its own thing. No, I'm not about to say One Piece is Manime, most of the time, but it still fits the ticket of being different than many other anime. Okay, to get back on track though, while I am truly implicitly biased in what Japanese cartoons I enjoy, shows like Fist of the North Star, which is maybe my favorite Japanese cartoon of all time, and I'm being dead serious here, are obviously different from something like your Naruto's or your My Hero Academias. Like, I really truly don't even have to state that these shows are vastly different, yet they are both Japanese cartoons, so thusly they are both anime. That would be their umbrella term, more or less. But Fist of the North Star, and many other anime, quote-unquote, held different values and different morals, and presented different themes overall. I'm not gonna say that Fist of the North Star is like the second coming of Christ or anything grand like that. I mean, it kind of is for me. But it appealed to me, and in a way that a lot of animated ages doesn't. And I guess in a way that I should have stated several minutes ago, but I just love talking about Manime too much and buff guys and lose track. I miss what Manime was doing back in the day. Manime is something that hyper-emphasized not just fighting. I mean, sure, that was the cool part, right? Seeing buff men fighting. However, there was development between these characters back then, which is rare to come by these days. There wasn't just enemies, guys weren't just buff just to be buff. Bad guys and good guys. It was sometimes bad guys, sometimes not so bad guys. There was variation. Part 3. Manime has great villains. Okay, sure, there were some purely evil characters, but a lot of these characters were nuanced. Contrary to popular belief that a lot of these 80s shows were just the same repeated loop and villain of the week or whatnot, a lot of the villains that Kenshiro would fight later reveal a nuance that is missing, not even just from anime these days, but a lot of modern media in general. Kenshiro wasn't just always fighting comically evil bad guys.
銃に頼り、今また人質に頼り、水長剣のこの男に頼ろうとする。貴様、一人では俺を倒せんのか。それが兄に対する言葉が、貴様俺を尊敬しろ。ジャギ様。よかろう。お前と一対一で決着をつけてやる。俺はシャマに対する憎しみだけで生きてきた。だから名を語り、悪事を俺のせいにしたのか。俺を尊敬しねえ奴はみんな殺してやった。そんなクズどもの命などこの傷の痛みの知りはないわ。
Listen, I love Jockey, but let's be real here. No, Kenshiro would sometimes fight characters coming from vastly different backgrounds than his own. Characters with their own motivations that would later be fleshed out and whose motives would be revealed to in some ways also be virtuous and reflect many of Kenshiro's own traits, but maybe their end goal and overall personality has become distorted over time as they've become disillusioned living in the wasteland and having different perspectives than Kenshiro. One example of this type of character is Souther. Spoilers ahead. I love Souther. Souther is a character who at first you see as a villain. No doubt about it. True evil in this universe. Souther is a strong, domineering tyrant who commands with a might makes right ideology and who forces the people he's enslaved to build his empire to be as grand as possible so that Souther may sit on a throne that reaches the heavens like the god Souther believes he is. But there's more to Souther than just that. So you see, there is still love in Souther's heart, but they've become hostile towards compassion and has, at this point, become a machine with the only purpose of conquering and being the strongest, more or less. It is revealed that Souther had been very similar to Kenshiro. He too mastered martial arts, and used to be a bright-eyed, passionate young apprentice until tragedy struck and the man training Souther forced Souther to kill him to complete his twisted training. This, and his time in the now cold and uncaring wasteland, had twisted Souther.
最後にお前に聞きたいことがある。愛や情けは悲しみしか生まぬ。なのになぜ悲しみを背負おうとする。なぜ苦しみを背負おうとする。
悲しみや苦しみだけではない。お前もぬくもりを覚えているはずだ。
ぬくもり。
Love is now something that seemed pointless, and the only thing that proved to be worthwhile was to dominate and conquer in this harsh wasteland. Because ultimately, love could be taken away from you. But this is the irony. Souther still loved so much, and couldn't avoid that it was all a facade. His domineering personality, and everything he conquered, it was just Souther masking his true feelings, mostly. Now another thing. This doesn't redeem Souther. Let's be clear about that, but it does humanize him, again. It shows that Souther took the wrong path, the same path that characters like Kenshiro could just have easily have walked. The conclusion ultimately is that when Souther realizes his empire is falling apart and that he will die soon after losing his fight with Kin, his feelings come welling out. He can no longer hide what he truly felt the entire time, and almost lapses into his childlike state, where he proclaims that all he truly wanted was for his martial arts master to remain alive. And then, like many other scenes in this amazing show and manga, Kenshiro sees his enemy as not just a bad guy, but a very, very flawed man who he feels pity for, who even kind of understands in some ways, but realizes the tragedy nonetheless, and then moves on. And, well, listen, I'm not gonna lie. I don't cry over media, really. It's just not really something I do. I'm not saying this makes me a better man than you. I'm not saying I have fat 2-ton balls that constantly drag on the ground wherever I walk. But it is scenes like this that do make my eyes water a bit. And this happens often in Fist of the North Star. Sometimes Kenshiro does fight someone who could only be described as just a pure demon. Absolute filth. Something that's become inhuman, but that's the way of life. There are monsters in life, child predators, rapists, all kinds of things that you'd rather not think about, but they exist, unfortunately. People who will take advantage of others with no remorse. There are people who have become monsters, There are also people from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, who others might see as evil through their own lens and biases, and their vastly different upbringings. But I miss this. I miss the complex character who can't be entirely redeemed. And that's the key point here. Can't be entirely redeemed, but whose actions ultimately make a little bit of sense. Sometimes even a lot of sense, but they went about it in the wrong way, or they just became entirely disillusioned and lost themselves completely. And I mean, there's all kinds of shows and movies and whatnot that will still portray characters like this today, but not always entirely in the same way. A character who is ultimately a villain with an ideology that can be approachable and might sometimes even be virtuous is often, nowadays, redeemed completely somehow. Either they do something good and they are the good guy now, or they just become even more villainous and double down. And neither of these are particularly always bad, just different flavors. But the villain that can't be redeemed, but ultimately comes back around and finds a smidgen of their humanity again before they die, is a character that I seek constantly. A character like Lord Genome. Alright, well, because Aniplex is the biggest fucking cucks on the earth, I'll just describe to you what's going on in this scene. Anyway, what's happening here is Lord Genome, the character that I really fucking love from this shit, is getting out of his mech to beat the shit out of another mech. That's pretty much all. It was really badass, and I recommend actually watching the real clip. Unfortunately, I can't show you here because, again, Aniplex are fucking cucks. But anyway, who is in my opinion a Manime character from a show that has Manime elements, but is mostly just a decent anime 80% of the time? Lord Genome is another character that perfectly encapsulates a person who ultimately tries in the end to at least alleviate some of their net negatives for humanity. Alright, and once again, because Aniplex just sucks so much hard fucking ass, can't show this footage either, but it's a graveyard where Lord Genome is putting his children in these little coffin machine things and slipping them down this hill here. He explains why later. Well, the show explains why. Anyway, I would have loved to show it to you. Can't. Aniplex sucks so fucking bad. But it's already too late, and even they realize this. This is, in my opinion, a perfect tragedy of a circumstantially villainous character. To become self-aware again, but to then also realize you are irredeemable. But also to then come to acceptance, then ultimately to sacrifice yourself. Or do one final good thing, that again, won't redeem you, but will at the very least show that you regained your humanity in the end. Yep, that's right. Aniplex is still a bunch of fucking cucks, so I can't show you this scene either, but it's basically the scene where Lord Genome sacrifices himself after realizing that he'd been wrong for so long, and it's his swan song, you know, what would be a redemption arc if he could have one. Great scene, again, just like all the other scenes I couldn't show you because any cucks just sucks so bad. Recommend watching it. It's a good scene though. That's all. This is one of my favorite character tropes. This is also why Lord Genome is my favorite character in Gurren Lagann, or at least a top 5 character in this show. But anyway, I'm losing focus again for the millionth time. This type of character is quite prominent in a lot of older anime. Its origin, at least for anime specifically, could have come from Manime. No doubt, anime or Manime did not invent this trait. I'm simply stating that Manime is probably the first of its subgenre of anime to start this trope, but I'm starting to wonder what I'm even saying, so let's get the show on the road again.
So how did you like that?
Loved it. I want to ride that horse again sometime. Ooh, yeah.
Wow.
Part 4. Modern anime has less appealing villains, with few exceptions. More specifically, modern anime and media in general today, with very few exceptions, pulls this off, and will usually either fall into one of two categories, and that is double down on the villain's evil goals even after revealing their somewhat virtuous side, or just become completely good in the end. For some people this is fine, and I won't fault anyone for that. Again, all of these are just different flavors for different people. I am personally just not a fan of this, and I would like to see some of modern anime return to the 80s stylized anime subgenre of manime. Now, obviously, we have some modern shows that can kinda hit the mark. Yeah, my point is, it's not enough. Call me a weirdo who is searching for a very specific niche, but I want more and more. Okay, now, I just know there's some people that are going to write in the comments, but what about JoJo's, huh? Did you think about JoJo's? And listen, JoJo's is pretty amazing, I think. Or it can be, but it's hit and miss. Part 1, 2, and 3 are amazing. Part 4 is pretty much a masterpiece. But then Araki got depressed and made Part 5, unfortunately. But I'm not gonna bitch about Part 5 in this video, because it's deserving of a whole video, and I do mean a whole video, where I would explain how much it should have theoretically done well, but fumbled almost everything so spectacularly. Well, anyway, after pissing off most of Japan just now, how about we move on? Now, I don't know the technicalities of sound engineering. I am not a musician in any way. I might have dabbled in FL Studio for a while in my life in the past, but I don't know the technical terms of these things, or at least not a lot of them, except on a very, very surface level. I will say though, the difference in compositions for older 80s anime and manime is another thing I miss. Much of modern anime uses tracks that aren't always necessarily bad, but just not the same. They too often focus on being as dramatic as possible, and just feel very inauthentic, I suppose. Play the action music when the action happens. Play the generic sad music when the generic sad happens. Play the happy music when it's happy time. What I just said might seem like it should make sense. I mean, why wouldn't you play happy music over a scene that's happy, right? I mean, the thing is, a lot of music from older anime and manime will try to fit with the emotion of the scenes.
だが、ユリアの命がこの俺に無双転生を吹き込んでくれた。
ユリアさん。見つめるわ。あなたのすべてを。この空から愛の雨降らせて見つめるわあなたの心生きることは戦うことじゃないの
And I'm going to sound a little bit pretentious again, and maybe even a bit up my own ass, but you know, it's my video. Maybe there'd be a scene where a fight was happening, which would typically be considered an action scene. Of course, but the overall mood wasn't focusing on the fight itself and all the action and high-octane fighting, but the reason for the fight. And that the characters didn't want to be fighting, but through some means of fate and destiny, this is what it all led up to, and they had to settle it now, so the composition would be melancholy. It would be this beautiful track that would focus more on the emotions, and would reflect on what the characters were feeling in this fight, rather than what you were visually looking at. And oftentimes, the music just felt very natural. It fit the mood, if it needed to fit the mood, or maybe it really was just an action scene and so a loud, bolsterous electric guitar theme would be playing. Alright, and in this scene, due to a Neoplex being massive fucking cucks again and completely blocking the footage again, just no way around it, gotta put this on it so you can't see the footage, but in this fight, Simone, the main protagonist, is going up against the Anti-Spiral, and it's a really cool scene. A lot of other cool shit had just happened that build up to this scene. And there's no music. They don't play any music during this very serious fist fight. It's just fist to face and fist to fist, and all you can hear is that. Just two beings beating the shit out of each other, and the lack of music brings it all together. Anyway, God, I hate Neoplex so fucking much. That's all. Regardless, this isn't just a problem with modern anime. This is another problem with just modern media in general. I might as well have titled this video Problems That an Aging Man Has with Media Nowadays. To put it a bit more blunt-like, oftentimes nowadays there's less thought put into when a track should play, and instead it's easier to just see an action scene and put some loud action music over it without any thought as to what the characters are actually feeling or what would actually be more fitting for the circumstance. And finally, we reach part 6, the conclusion. Well, here we are. Honestly, there is more that I could probably drone on about, but I don't typically do these kinds of longer form videos, so you'll have to forgive me. It's something that I'm kind of learning, but I'm a little exhausted for now. Maybe I'll do another video related to this topic in the future. But for now, I have more or less said everything I've wanted to. I want to express once again that people can enjoy whatever they want. I mean, I literally can't stop you, even if I wanted to. My biggest point is mostly that I just miss when this niche of mine, at least I think it's mostly a niche, but regardless, I just simply miss when this subgenre of anime that I and many others call manime felt more like how it used to. And I know that's kind of a vague thing to finish off with, but I mean, you watched the video, right? Surely you're not just skipping to the end here. Jokes aside, I miss overall how it felt in the 80s.
Yeah, yep, things was better in the 80s, so I should have been born in the 80s.
But, again, jokes aside, the immense amount of soul that it had. It didn't always have a great budget, but the thought and effort put into it stood out. And that is why stuff like Fist of the North Star, and even old Dragon Ball, still hold up to the test of time. And even today, you will find people that love these franchises, and just like me, wish for it to return. And with that being said, I hope you all have a good one.